Sarah Collins had waited 847 days for this moment. 16 years old, confined to a wheelchair since birth. She'd saved every penny from her weekend job wrapping gifts at the mall. Her parents had saved too. All of them working toward one goal: front row seats to see Michael Jackson at Wembley Stadium. But on July 16, 1992, as 72,000 fans jumped to their feet during Jam, Sarah couldn't see anything except the backs of the people in front of her. She was crying. Not from joy, but from heartbreak. And then Michael Jackson, mid-moonwalk, saw her. What happened in the next 8 minutes would prove that sometimes the smallest gesture creates the biggest miracles. But to understand this moment, we need to go back. Not just hours, but years. We need to understand who Sarah Collins was, and why this concert meant more to her than anyone else in that stadium of 72,000 screaming fans. Sarah was born on February 14, 1976, 3 months premature. Valentine's Day baby, her mother Jennifer liked to say, though there was nothing sweet about those first weeks. Sarah weighed just 2 pounds, 3 ounces. She was so small that her father Robert's wedding ring could slide up her entire arm like a bracelet. The doctors gave her a 10% chance of survival. But Sarah Collins, even at 2 pounds, was a fighter. She survived the first week, then the first month, then the first year. But survival came with complications. Cerebral palsy, a condition caused by damage to the developing brain, affecting movement, muscle tone, and posture. By age 2, when most children were running and climbing, Sarah couldn't sit up without support. By age 5, when most children were riding bikes, Sarah was learning to navigate a wheelchair. The doctors had a lot of opinions about what Sarah would never do. Never walk, never live independently, never have a normal life. And for years, Sarah believed them. How could she not? Every mirror showed her a body that didn't work the way other people's bodies worked. Every classroom had stairs she couldn't climb. Every playground had equipment she couldn't use. Every school dance had music she couldn't move to. But then, when Sarah was 9 years old, something changed. Her older brother David, who was 13 and obsessed with music, came home with a VHS tape. Thriller, Michael Jackson's music video. David wanted to learn the zombie dance. He played that tape over and over, practicing the moves, trying to get the choreography perfect. And Sarah watched. She watched from her wheelchair, as Michael Jackson moved in ways that seemed to defy physics. The moonwalk, the spin, the toe stand, movements so smooth they looked effortless. Even though Sarah understood better than most people how much strength and control that required. Sarah couldn't move her legs the way she wanted, couldn't control her arms with precision, couldn't make her body do what her brain told it to do. But watching Michael Jackson dance made her feel something she'd never felt before. If she couldn't dance, at least she could watch someone who could. Someone who made movement look like magic. Someone who proved that bodies could do impossible things. Michael Jackson became Sarah's escape. When kids at school teased her, she went home and watched Smooth Criminal. When physical therapy was painful and frustrating, she rewarded herself by listening to Man in the Mirror. When she felt like giving up, she watched Michael perform and remembered that extraordinary things were possible. Not for her, maybe, but possible. By the time Sarah was 14, she had watched every Michael Jackson video dozens of times. She knew every song by heart, could recite the lyrics to Black or White, and remember the time from memory. Her bedroom walls were covered in posters. Michael mid-spin, Michael pointing at the camera, Michael in that white glove that had become more famous than most people's entire careers. Sarah's parents, Robert and Jennifer, watched their daughter's obsession with gentle concern. They were practical people. Robert worked as a mechanical engineer. Jennifer was a school nurse. They believed in evidence-based medicine, physical therapy, realistic expectations. They worried that Sarah's fixation on Michael Jackson, a man who could do everything she couldn't, might make her more aware of her limitations rather than less. But they also saw something else. When Sarah listened to Michael's music, she smiled. When she watched his videos, she forgot to be sad about what her body couldn't do. And in a life that had been filled with hospital visits, painful procedures, and constant reminders of disability, those moments of joy were precious. So when Michael Jackson announced the Dangerous World Tour would be coming to Wembley Stadium in July 1992, Robert and Jennifer made a decision. They would get Sarah front row tickets, not nosebleed seats, not accessible seating in the back where wheelchairs were typically relegated, but front row, the best seats in the house, where Sarah could see her hero up close, where for once in her life, she wouldn't be pushed to the back, hidden away, told to make do with a limited view. Front row tickets at Wembley Stadium cost £847 for 3 seats. That was more money than the Collins family could afford. Robert's salary as an engineer was modest. Jennifer's nursing income helped, but they had 3 children and medical expenses that insurance didn't fully cover. £847 was groceries for 3 months. It was the payment on their car. It was money they absolutely did not have to spare, but they saved it anyway. Robert took extra shifts. Jennifer picked up weekend hours. They stopped going out to dinner, canceled their summer vacation, turned down the heat to save on electric bills. And every month, they put a little more money into an envelope marked Sarah's concert. David, Sarah's brother, contributed too. He was 16 and had a part-time job at a grocery store. He added his earnings to the envelope without being asked. It took 23 months, nearly 2 years of sacrifice. But on May 3, 1992, Robert called the Wembley box office and purchased 3 tickets. Section A, Row 2, Seats 7, 8, and 9. Second row, center section. As close to Michael Jackson as you could get without being on stage yourself. When Robert came home and told Sarah they had the tickets, she cried for an hour. Happy tears, disbelieving tears, grateful tears. She couldn't believe her parents had done this. Couldn't believe that in 2 months she would actually see Michael Jackson perform live. Not on a VHS tape. Not on television, but in person. Real and close and actually there. The next 74 days felt eternal. Sarah counted down every single one. She made a paper chain, ripping off 1 link each morning. She played Michael's albums constantly, memorizing every note, every lyric, every ad-lib. She studied concert footage, learning exactly what to expect. The pyrotechnics, the costume changes, the moment when Michael would grab his crotch, and the audience would lose their minds. Sarah wanted to know every moment, so she could fully appreciate it when it happened. July 16, 1992, finally arrived. Sarah woke up at 5 a.m., even though the concert didn't start until 8 p.m. She was too excited to sleep, too excited to eat breakfast, too excited to do anything except think about the fact that in 15 hours, she would see Michael Jackson. Robert had rented an accessible van to get Sarah's wheelchair to Wembley. They left their house in Reading at 3 p.m., giving themselves plenty of time to navigate London traffic and get Sarah situated. Jennifer had packed snacks, water, Sarah's medications, and a jacket in case the evening got cold. David wore his Michael Jackson Dangerous tour shirt, bought specifically for this occasion. They arrived at Wembley Stadium at 5 p.m., 3 hours before showtime, but the area around the stadium was already packed with fans. People in Michael Jackson costumes, girls crying with excitement, boys practicing the moonwalk on the pavement, street vendors selling unofficial merchandise. The energy was electric, overwhelming, beautiful. Getting Sarah through the crowd and into the stadium was challenging. People were pushing, rushing toward entrances, desperate to get good spots. Robert had to physically shield Sarah's wheelchair, creating a barrier with his body so she wouldn't get knocked over. Jennifer held onto the wheelchair handles, guiding from behind. David ran interference, asking people politely to please make room. They had a wheelchair coming through. Security checked their tickets. Section A, Row 2. They were escorted to their seats by a Wembley staff member, who looked at Sarah with that expression she'd seen 1,000 times. Pity, mixed with awkward kindness. Right this way, love. We'll get you sorted. Their seats were incredible. Row 2, dead center, so close to the stage that Sarah could see the individual lights on the sound equipment. So close that when the show started, she'd be able to see Michael's face clearly. The wheelchair-accessible space was right at the end of Row 2, next to the barrier that separated the seating area from the standing room floor section. Sarah positioned her wheelchair carefully. She wanted the perfect view. Wanted to see everything. Her hands were shaking with excitement. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Around her, 72,000 people were filling Wembley Stadium, talking, laughing, screaming with anticipation. At exactly 8:15 p.m., the lights went down. The crowd's roar was so loud it felt physical, like a wave of sound that crashed over everyone. And then the opening video began. Michael's greatest hits, playing on the massive screens, the audience, singing along to every word, building anticipation, building energy. And then, at 8:30 p.m., Michael Jackson took the stage. The explosion of noise was unlike anything Sarah had ever experienced. 72,000 people, screaming at the same time. The ground literally shook. Fireworks exploded. Lights flashed, and there he was. Michael Jackson. Real. Alive. 10 feet away from where Sarah sat, wearing that gold jacket, moving with that impossible grace. Everything Sarah had dreamed of for 847 days was happening right now. The concert opened with jam. High energy, fast-paced. Michael and his dancers moving in perfect synchronization. The choreography was flawless, every move sharp and precise. Sarah watched, mesmerized, tears already streaming down her face from pure joy. But then something terrible happened. About 90 seconds into jam, the entire floor section, hundreds of people in the standing room area, jumped to their feet, all at once, creating a wall of bodies between Sarah and the stage. Sarah, sitting in her wheelchair at floor level, suddenly couldn't see anything except backs. Just hundreds of backs. T-shirts and jackets and raised arms blocking her entire view. The stage was right there, 10 feet away, but it might as well have been 10 miles. Sarah couldn't see Michael, couldn't see the dancers, couldn't see anything except the people in front of her who had no idea they were blocking someone who couldn't stand up to see over them. "Dad," Sarah said, her voice cracking. "Dad, I can't see." Robert immediately stood up, trying to create a gap. "Excuse me," he called to the people in front. "My daughter is in a wheelchair. She can't see. Could you please?" But his voice was drowned out by the music and the crowd noise. The people in the standing section couldn't hear him, or if they could, they couldn't move, because they were packed in so tightly. There was nowhere to go, no space to shift. The standing room section was designed for standing, not for wheelchair accessibility. Jennifer tried too. "Please, my daughter can't see. She's in a wheelchair." But the same problem. Too loud, too crowded, too chaotic. Sarah sat in her wheelchair, tears now flowing for completely different reasons. She'd waited 847 days for this. Her family had saved for nearly 2 years. They'd sacrificed everything to get these tickets. And she couldn't see anything. She was at Michael Jackson's concert, closer to him than most people would ever get, and she was completely blocked, invisible, just like always. Marcus Hall, head of security for Wembley Stadium, was positioned stage left, monitoring the crowd through his headset. He'd worked dozens of Michael Jackson concerts, knew the routine, knew when to expect crowd surges, knew how to spot potential problems before they became actual problems. But about 2 minutes into jam, something unusual happened. Michael Jackson, mid-choreography, moved to the very edge of the stage, not to interact with the crowd, which he did frequently, but to look at something specific. His eyes fixed on a spot in the second row. He kept dancing, never missed a step, but his attention was clearly focused on something that shouldn't have been part of the performance. Marcus followed Michael's gaze. Second row, center section, a girl in a wheelchair, crying, her father standing next to her, trying desperately to create a sightline. Her mother behind the wheelchair, looking helpless. The girl's face was visible in the stage lights, and she wasn't crying happy tears. She was heartbroken. Michael saw it too. Marcus watched as Michael's expression changed, still performing, still dancing, but something shifted. Michael Moon walked closer to the edge, maintaining eye contact with the girl, and then he did something Marcus had never seen in his 15 years of concert security. Still dancing, still moving to the beat, Michael pointed directly at the girl, then he gestured to Marcus, and mouthed 4 clear words. "Bring her to me." Marcus froze. This wasn't protocol. You didn't move audience members during a performance. You didn't disrupt the carefully planned choreography and staging. You especially didn't move someone in a wheelchair through a packed standing section in the middle of a song. There were liability issues, safety concerns, logistical problems. But Michael wasn't asking. He was telling, and he kept dancing, kept performing, but his eyes stayed locked on Marcus until Marcus nodded. Marcus spoke urgently into his radio. "All units, we have a special request from Michael. Second row, center section, wheelchair user. We're bringing her to stage front. Clear a path from section A to the stage barrier. Do it now." The security team sprang into action. 6 security personnel moved into the standing section, creating a corridor. "Excuse me, we need to get through. Please step aside." Security coming through. They were gentle but firm, physically moving people when necessary, creating a narrow path from row 2 through the packed standing section to the very front barrier. Robert looked up in confusion as security approached. "Sir," one of the guards said loudly over the music, "Michael Jackson has requested that your daughter be moved to the front. Will you come with us?" Robert couldn't process the words. "What?" "Michael wants your daughter at the front. We're moving her now." Sarah's eyes went wide. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But the security guard was already releasing the brake on her wheelchair, and Robert grabbed one handle while the guard grabbed the other. Jennifer and David followed behind as they navigated through the narrow corridor the security team had created. It took 90 seconds to move Sarah from row 2 through the standing section to the very front barrier. The entire time, Michael kept performing, never stopped dancing, never stopped singing, but his eyes followed Sarah's movement through the crowd, making sure she was safe, making sure his instructions were being followed. When Sarah reached the front barrier, the very front, directly in front of the stage, security positioned her wheelchair in a specially cleared space. Now there was nothing between Sarah and the stage, except 10 feet of air. She could see everything. Michael's face, his costume, every move, every step, every gesture. She had the best view in the entire stadium, and Michael knew exactly where she was. The next thing Michael did made 72,000 people realize something special was happening. He finished the current verse of Jam, hit his mark, and then he walked to the very edge of the stage, right to where Sarah sat in her wheelchair. Now at the front barrier, tears streaming down her face. Michael looked directly at her. Really looked. Not the casual glance performers give audience members, but eye contact, real connection. And he smiled. That Michael Jackson smile that had melted hearts worldwide. He pointed at Sarah, then at himself, then back at her. A clear message. This is for you. For the next 3 minutes, Michael Jackson performed Jam directly to Sarah Collins. Every spin, he checked to make sure she could see. Every move, he positioned himself to give her the best view. Every gesture seemed directed at this 16-year-old girl who had waited 847 days for this moment and almost had it taken away. The crowd around Sarah noticed, started looking at her, understanding that something beautiful was happening. People in the standing section, who moments ago had been blocking her view, were now cheering for her, clapping for her. A chant started. Sarah, Sarah, Sarah. Though nobody except her family actually knew her name, they were just cheering for the girl in the wheelchair that Michael Jackson was honoring. When Jam ended, instead of moving immediately into the next song, Michael did something else, unprecedented. He walked off stage for a moment. The crowd murmured, confused. Was something wrong? Was there a technical issue? Michael returned 30 seconds later, carrying something, a white sequined glove. Not a replica, not merchandise, but one of his actual performance gloves. The ones he wore during Billie Jean, the ones that were iconic and valuable and never given away. He walked to the edge of the stage again, knelt down as close to Sarah as the barrier would allow, and held out the glove. Security helped bridge the gap, and Michael Jackson placed his glove into Sarah Collins's trembling hands. "You're the strongest person here tonight," Michael said. His voice wasn't amplified, but Sarah heard him. The crowd in the immediate area heard him. Don't ever forget that. Sarah couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could only sob and clutch the glove like it was the most precious thing in the universe. Because to her it was. Michael touched her hand briefly, gave her one more smile, and then returned to center stage. The concert continued. Smooth Criminal, The Way You Make Me Feel, Billie Jean, every song perfect, every moment magical. But nothing, absolutely nothing, compared to those 8 minutes when Michael Jackson saw a girl who was invisible and made her scene. After the concert ended, Sarah and her family were escorted backstage. Sarah didn't know this was going to happen. Neither did her parents, but security approached them as they were leaving and said, "Michael would like to meet Sarah. Will you come with us?" They were taken to Michael's dressing room, a private space usually reserved only for his closest team members. Michael was there, still in his stage clothes, makeup slightly smudged from the performance. He was drinking water, talking with his choreographer, winding down from the intense show. When Sarah was wheeled in, Michael turned immediately, walked over, knelt down again, so he was at her eye level. "Hi, Sarah," he said gently. "You know my name?" Sarah whispered. "Security told me. I wanted to know the name of the brave girl who came to my show." "I'm not brave," Sarah said. I'm in a wheelchair." Michael shook his head firmly. "You live every day in a body that's hard to live in. You deal with pain and difficulty that most people can't imagine, and you still smile. You still came here tonight. You still felt joy. That's the definition of brave, Sarah." They talked for 45 minutes, about music, about dancing, about life. Michael told her stories about learning to moonwalk, about messing up choreography, about being nervous before shows. He treated her not like a disabled fan to be pitied, but like a person whose company he genuinely enjoyed. Before Sarah left, Michael gave her something else, a handwritten note on dangerous tour stationery. Sarah still has it framed on her wall. It reads, "Dear Sarah, you asked me how I learned to dance. I learned by trying even when people said I couldn't. You've been trying your whole life, even when people said you couldn't. That makes you the real dancer. Never stop. Love, Michael Jackson." The Collins family drove home from Wembley Stadium at midnight. Sarah clutched the white glove the entire journey, afraid to let it go, afraid this might all be a dream. But it wasn't a dream. It was real. All of it was real. The next morning, Sarah woke up and looked at the glove on her nightstand. Physical proof that the previous night had happened. Physical proof that Michael Jackson, the greatest performer in the world, had seen her. Really seen her. Not as a disabled girl to be pitied, but as a person who mattered. Something changed in Sarah that day. She started attending physical therapy with new energy, started pushing herself harder. Not because she thought she'd suddenly be able to walk or dance, but because Michael Jackson had told her she was strong, and she wanted to prove he was right. Over the next year, Sarah's physical therapist noticed a dramatic difference in her effort and attitude. "Whatever happened to you," the therapist said, "keep doing it. You're making progress I didn't think was possible." What happened was simple. For the first time in her life, Sarah believed she was capable of extraordinary things, not despite her disability, but as a complete person who happened to have cerebral palsy. By the time Sarah was 18, she had regained enough muscle control to use arm crutches instead of a wheelchair for short distances. By 20, she could walk short distances independently. By 25, she was walking with only a slight limp that most people didn't notice. Sarah went to university, studied physical therapy, became certified, and opened her own practice, specializing in treating children with cerebral palsy. "I know what it's like," she tells her young patients. "I know your body feels like it's working against you. I know people see your wheelchair before they see you, but I need you to understand something. You're not broken. You're not less than. You're strong in ways that people who have never struggled will never understand." And in her office, hanging on the wall where every patient can see it, is a white sequined glove in a protective case, and below it, a handwritten note from Michael Jackson. On June 25, 2009, Sarah was working at her clinic when the news broke. Michael Jackson had died. She closed her office immediately, went home, and cried for hours. The world had lost an icon, but Sarah had lost something more personal. She'd lost the man who saw her when she was invisible, who made her believe she was strong, who gave her a gift that changed her entire life. At Michael's public memorial, thousands of people shared stories about what Michael meant to them. His music, his dancing, his humanitarian work. Sarah wanted to share her story too, wanted the world to know that Michael's greatness wasn't just about his artistry, it was about his humanity. She wrote a letter to the Michael Jackson estate, told them about July 16, 1992, about the white glove, about the 45 minutes backstage, about how Michael had changed her life with one small gesture, about how she'd become a physical therapist because of what he taught her about strength. The estate wrote back. They wanted to meet her, wanted to hear the full story, and they asked if she would donate the white glove to the official Michael Jackson Museum so that Sarah's story could inspire other people the way Michael had inspired her. Sarah thought about it. That glove was her most precious possession, the physical connection to the best night of her life. But then she realized something. The glove sitting in her office only inspired her patients, maybe a few hundred people over the years. The glove in a museum could inspire millions. She donated the glove, and next to it in the museum display is the full story of July 16, 1992, the night he stopped his performance to make sure she could see, the night he gave her his glove and told her she was strong, the night one gesture changed a life. Today, Sarah Collins is 49 years old. She runs a successful physical therapy practice in London. She's married, has 2 children, and walks with only a slight limp. When people ask her how she overcame cerebral palsy to live such a full life, she always tells them the same thing. "I didn't overcome cerebral palsy. I learned to live with it. And I learned from Michael Jackson that being strong doesn't mean your body works perfectly. It means your spirit refuses to quit, even when your body makes everything harder." July 16, 1992, Michael Jackson was performing Jam to 72,000 screaming fans at Wembley Stadium. He saw a girl in a wheelchair crying because she couldn't see, and instead of continuing his meticulously rehearsed performance, he improvised. He changed plans. He stopped what he was doing to make sure one person, One single person out of 72,000 felt seen. That's not just great showmanship. That's humanity. That's choosing compassion over convenience. That's understanding that sometimes the most important thing you can do is make one person feel like they matter. Sarah Collins waited 847 days to see Michael Jackson. And Michael Jackson gave her not just a concert, but a lifelong belief that she was extraordinary. That white glove sits in a museum now. But what it represents: kindness, recognition, the power of seeing people who are usually invisible. That's still changing lives, still inspiring people, still proving that sometimes the smallest gesture creates the biggest miracles